All right, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry to cut your conversation short here. It's a real pleasure being here today. We'll talk about that stuff in a minute, but let's get things started. I'm noticing people are sitting in different places than you're used to, so.
Just trying to, keep you on your toes.
Yeah, no kidding. Talking about shaking up. There's going to be a lot of shaking up today. So
I know.
let's get going with roll call. Let me ask Kendall to get us going.
Yes, sir. Brian Yonta.
Here.
Thank you. Dave Wegman. Thank you. Derek Bays.
Here.
Thank you. Doris Cooksey.
Here.
Thank you. Annalisa Peace for Debbie Reed. Thank you. Nefi Garza.
Present.
Thank you. Kara Tackett. Here. Thank you. Jeffrey Carroll.
Here.
Thank you.
Yep.
John Beasley. Suzanne Scott. Here. Thank you. Steve Gonzalez. Dave Mock. Stephen Klaus. Thank you. Marty Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. James Gunn. Jamie McCool. Thank you. Jared Bowen.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Robles.
Present.
Thank you. Anita Machiavello.
Here.
Thank you. And Susan Roberts. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's move on to item number 2, which is public comment. We are limiting to 3 minutes per person. Let me remind you, will be the first of 2 opportunities the public will have to provide any kind of comments to us at this point. Kendall, is there anybody that has signed up?
No, sir, there are no public comments at this time.
Okay. Moving on to item number 3, the approval of the minutes from the previous San Antonio Regional Flood Planning Group meeting. I believe you all have a copy of that, of those meeting minutes. For those online, I believe they were emailed to you. You should have a copy of those. Please take a minute to review them. If you haven't, I'll pause for a few minutes to let you look over them. At some point, I'd like to get an approval, a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Getting a motion for approval in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We will move on to the next item, agenda item number 4, communication from the Texas Water Development Board. Anita, I believe you're on the call.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I just have a few updates. We are hosting our Tech Consultants Conference call on Wednesday, June 29th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. And I just wanted to give a reminder to submit the executed subcontract amendment and other required info when ready. We sent an email back in March 16th with good information about that. If you have any questions, let me know. And we also recently sent our latest newsletter. So I encourage everyone to take a look at that, as it has a lot of helpful information on there. That's it.
Thank you, Anita. From the group, is there any questions that you have for Anita at this point? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item, which is a chair report. I think I'm going to do B first, just to get that one over with. Just a kind of a reminder that the draft regional flood plan is due in August 1st. So the next 2 meetings are critical for approving the appropriate materials. So we're really going to need you guys to help me dig into this information here, because August 1st will be the draft regional flood plan. I suppose we're going to talk a little bit about that today. All right. All right. The next item is a little bit more of a personal announcement that I need to share. So I have left the city of San Antonio effective last Friday. So some of you may know that, maybe not. I have gone to the private sector. And as a matter of fact, today was my first day. I showed up, got a computer, and said, "Oh, I got a meeting. I got to run." Having said that, I think it's only fair that I give you all an opportunity to talk about, what this committee feels we should do about this. And what I'm referring to is that on another situation, another committee member here also changed jobs, and there were some discussions, and we had some discussions. So I feel that it's only fair that you also have an opportunity to have those same discussions, and to the point where I will even step out of the room and allow you guys to speak freely and openly, and then I can come back and you guys tell me what you think. But let me just remind you that my appointment has been for flood control. I wasn't on this committee representing the city of San Antonio municipalities, actually represented by Mr. Carroll, Jeff, who represent the municipalities. But I turned in my resignation and I left the city of San Antonio last Friday. Going to the private sector, it was a tough decision. It wasn't easy. I'd been there for, I guess this was actually my second time at this city. I'd been there for 5 years this time. So a total of 9 years overall. At this point, I want to let you guys kind of talk about what this committee is going to do with regard to my position as chair and then ultimately my position in this committee. I'll let you guys talk about, I'd like to defer this moment to let Derek kind of take over for this moment while I step out of the room and let you guys speak freely. I think it's only fair, when another member here, when that happened, we asked her to step out while we had discussions. I only think that's right that I do the same. So given that, Derek, I'd like to give you the floor and I will step outside and you guys let me know when you guys want me back in.
Neppy, this is Doris. I raised my hand,
Yes,
but can you tell us what company you went to and what role you said it will be in flood planning? Is that what I understood?
Yes. Thank you for the question. I'm actually going to a company by the name of Tetra Tech, and my role is going to be in flood planning and flood. I'll be working with the Texas area to continue to do this work as flood control and flood warning and things like that. So I will continue to be in the industry. I just will not be working for the city of San Antonio. So
Would that company be willing to allow you the time to continue your role?
Yes. If part of my negotiation with them was to have the freedom and to be able to do this, continue to do this role, and they endorsed that. They said it was fine.
Okay, I think that's very helpful for us to know.
Yes,
thank you.
By all means. Any other questions before I step out of the room? Okay.
I just have kind of a staff question on logistics. We did have another similar circumstance, and we were able to talk about that at the executive committee first, and then even an executive session. Do we have that option to do? Because right now we're a public meeting.
Kendall, I would defer to you on that, but I believe we could not do it right now because it's not publicly noticed. So it would have to be at a future meeting.
So in other words, we could defer to a future meeting, an executive session discussion where we're not on a public forum meeting. Correct. And have conversations. I may move that that's the most appropriate for the long-term discussion and decision. I think for me in the short term, we are this close to the final report that I would hate to say at this point, I want to be fair in how we handled this the first time, but we're a month away. And, for me, the question is, does he stay as chair? In my mind, he stays on. You can't replace anybody in that timeline and has all the knowledge. I think we'd miss out on that conversation. But I don't know if it's just defer the whole thing to a future conversation of after August 1st, what happens and how should that be handled?
Yeah, and I'm willing to make a couple of comments that don't think are going to be controversial or anything that can't be on public record, but Neffy represents flood control districts. Is all of his career, both at Sarah, the city of San Antonio twice, and at Tetra Tech, is all going to be in a similar role in a similar field. I don't see him being conflicted out. As Kara mentions, we have the goal line in sight, and I hesitate to change leadership in the middle of this thing. So I'm likely to support the continuation of Neffy.
And I agree with everything that's been said. I guess my only question is similar, since I was in a similar situation. I'm kind of speaking from trying to be fair and thinking about the city of San Antonio. And granted, they're going to be going through their own process. They're going to figure out, similar again to what happened between Derek and I in that situation. So I think at some point, and not right now, but at some point we may be in a similar situation where if the person who comes back to replace Neffy, and if the city of San Antonio wants to have some representation on this committee that is the major metropolitan area that is in this, in this region, that we may want to think about a similar situation again, either adding another municipality member or something like that. I mean, obviously it's really hard to do, and not to say Neffy doesn't understand the city, but technically around this table, he's not representing the city of San Antonio and probably can't speak for them, even though he has an incredible amount of knowledge that's very beneficial to us. I just want to put that on the table at some point. I totally agree with what Kara is saying. That decision does not need to be made now until such time as there's somebody in place that would want that representation. But I just wanted to put that on the table for future consideration as well.
It sounds like, and I don't know if anybody online wants to weigh in, but what I'm hearing is the consensus is at the first, meeting opportunity after the August report is submitted would be the appropriate time to take this up in executive committee, executive session, all of those, proper formalities. Is that, I see some head nodding. Is there anybody who feels otherwise?
Yeah, this is Doris. I don't feel otherwise. I would just support his continuation on the committee. And I agree with what everybody has said about the timing and so on and so forth. I don't know anything about possible conflicts. I think, if that were to occur, I think he would let us know because he's very familiar with that. But I also agree that COSA probably needs to have somebody represent them directly. And I would be all in agreement with creating another position to do that because Neffy does have a significant amount of, I think he's far more valuable to this committee than, for example, I am because I don't have that much experience doing flood planning. And so I would be all for him continuing.
Okay, so thank you, Doris. So is the consensus, the first available meeting opportunities in August, which we have not set yet, would be the appropriate time to discuss both, Neffy's position on the board as well as a member or not, and then as chair or not. Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will, Kendall, defer that one until, as we discussed, and I guess if you want to.
And we need no
welcome him back in.
motion since we didn't have a posting,
We
right?
didn't have it was just a chair update. You have to sit on this side of the table now.
Actually, we chose to punish you and keep you right there.
Dang it.
That's the real.
All right. So
We deferred all discussion until the first available. We deferred all discussion until the first available meeting opportunity after the August report is in.
after the August 1st. Okay.
Yep.
Very good. And executive or?
to be figured out, but I think probably executive committee with executive session and then moving to the full board.
Sounds good. Okay. I support that. Well, thank you. Thank you guys for that. I know that was a little off script there. Let's move on to item number 6, please, which is an update from Region 12 subcommittees. And we'll begin with Suzanne.
Thank you. So the outreach committee met on the 22nd, and we got a report on the 3 public meetings that we had early June and then June 16th. And I don't know if we want to defer to the consultants to do that presentation, or do you want me to go ahead and give from my notes? Okay. So we had the first meeting at Rayburn Middle School, I think. There were 5 non-staff consultant, just public there. The Leon
Staff consultant at 20.
I think there was probably about 10, maybe something like that. Leon Valley city manager attended the meeting, and following that, she requested that there be a meeting in Leon Valley because of the fact that they've been dealing with this issue quite a bit in that community, and she felt like if there was a meeting in that general area, there would be much more participation. So hold on that just for a second. And then June 7th, we had the meeting in Shirts. There were approximately about 5, again, non-consultants / staff. I think overall there was probably with us there maybe 10 people again. But there were representatives from the city of Shirts, right there, and had some good information about some flooding in their area, and brought those and some project ideas, et cetera. So that I thought the meeting I was at that one, and that one was very productive for that particular community. And then June 16th, there was a meeting in Floresville. Again, low attendance as far as the citizens. There were 4 people, but 2 elected officials specifically from the area, and said that they were not aware of this process. So they outreach and communication was good. It got them at the meeting, and they were, were briefed, understood what was going on, felt like this was an important process. At the time we had the June 22nd meeting, we did a survey, by the way, at each of these. We included the survey in the outreach materials that we put out, as well as asked the people that attended these meetings to complete a survey. And at the time, I think there was about 10 surveys that had been completed. I don't know if there's been any more since that meeting that we had last week. So not as many people, obviously participating in the process as we would all like. But we are in the middle of a drought, and most people aren't thinking about flooding, unfortunately, and it is summer. So, I mean, it's not unexpected to have this situation. From what the consultants have been talking amongst other consultants, because many of them, are on other teams, et cetera, it seems like the same type of feedback is happening throughout the state. There's not as much participation as some areas are having more participation, some are having less. So what we talked about really trying to figure out is really trying to push forward to the August plan as it's released August 1st. What can we do between now and then? Because we want to have another round of public input on, because there's a 90 day. Is it 90 or 60? 90? Okay, I thought it was 60. But anyway, there is a 90-day feedback period on the draft plan. Is someone going to say something? Okay. A 90-day feedback after the August 1st plan is released. So we are now scheduling the next round of meetings. So we're going to do one at the city of San Antonio, here in the city of San Antonio, Bexar County, here at the San Antonio River Authority. I think we were looking mid-August, maybe August 18th, depending on the availability. I know Kendall was going to be looking at those dates. I think I have an email. was it? I think y'all sent me an email on the final dates, but I haven't. But anyway, y'all can correct me. Then Leon Valley, we're going to do that meeting in Leon Valley. I think they chose the 17th of August. Then we're going to do one down in Goliad. And then we're going to do a virtual one. So the virtual one would be a recording of the presentation and then putting that online, doing some pushing out on Facebook and on the website, et cetera, to try to get that. There's also a big TFMA conference in Bastrop that's happening also in August. And we thought maybe Ron was going to talk to the TFMA and see if there's an opportunity for all the regions to have the ability for other floodplain managers that are there to come up and look at the plans, not only ours, but others, to see if there's opportunities to have that interaction, because many of the people that come to the TFMA conference are, stakeholders. They're people from other communities that do this. So I thought that was a good idea. The other thing we're going to try to do is really push over the next month or two and during this feedback period to really push some media outreach, try to get some media stories using the fact that this region, particularly the work that the BRWM has done, it was the model for the creation of this state flood planning process. And now we're getting to the point where we're having the first of these plans coming out, and trying to really talk, encourage people, use some media hooks, maybe get on some of the talk shows like The Source and others. Maybe Neffy and Derek could get out and kind of talk about it, why it's important, even though we're in the middle of a drought. Droughts are often broken by floods. So it's coming. We know it will, and why this is an important process, why it's going to tee us up for the potential of new funding coming in at the state level, and as we get ready for the legislative session, just to gin up some media stories, and then also talk about the fact that there are these public meetings that will be coming up in August that will have the draft plan. We do want—
Suzanne, let me interrupt
okay.
you really quick. I know that at least in Bear County, the San Antonio River Authority is going to issue out the flood map.
Yes, we
You
talked
beat me
about
to
that.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about
is there
that
going to be some
nexus.
synergy there?
Yeah,
Mhm.
we exactly talked about that. I think Kendall mentioned that those things, the timing of those may be nice in sync with the work that y'all are doing. So, and that'll be another reason why, another media hook, if you will, for why this planning process, along with the new maps that y'all are going to be issuing, is all kind of synergistic.
And Steve Graham is our lead for coordinating, that outreach effort, media, et cetera.
Well, if there's any way we can link up, Steve, as to what we're trying to do here and what y'all are doing, just to get more exposure to this process. And again, I think capitalizing on the fact that this whole process was the genesis of it was all the success that we've had here in this region. And I think that's a good way to say, look, it's working. And this is another result of, and the bond issue, and, the fact that that's happened. I mean, there's great things happening here. It doesn't mean that there's not opportunities to do even more. So long and short, I think that the committee, we're going to have another of our meetings coming up. I think we're going to meet on the 14th of July, the outreach committee, right before our next Region 12 meeting, just to kind of make sure that we're all in line with the meetings that we've set up, some of the outreach that the team is working on, getting these media stories put together. So maybe between now and then, if the River Authority has some type of a schedule of what your outreach is going to be, see how we can dovetail into that and work on those media stories. That would be great. Ron, is there anything I was missing based on that recap?
Very well.
Okay.
Better than I would have probably.
All right.
That's very good. Thank you, Suzanne. Really appreciate that thorough report. But let's make sure and keep these August dates in front of us, so that, as they start appearing, if we can attend, or some of us may be able to attend.
Yeah, and Kendall, could you please make sure that those send that out to the same group for our calendars? Because I think the last meetings I had gotten, people had asked me that it didn't get on the calendar as an outreach, from Kindle on people's calendars. So if you would do that, I think that would be helpful, just so everybody has it on their calendar. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that update from the communications group. And let me now turn the time over to the technical subcommittee.
So mine will be very short because it is item 8 on the agenda, so I don't need to rehash what we'll talk about. Suffice it to say, the technical committee will have, or does have, a recommendation to move the list forward, and we'll go into that in more detail. And we did set a subcommittee meeting for July 19th, just for awareness, to make sure that we could meet any requirements for the Region 12 25th meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Derek, on that. Moving on to the next item, agenda item number seven. We are going to pull that one for today, that we will not be doing that. Item number 7, we will be postponing it for a future time. I think there was a message from Dave.
Dave sincerely apologizes for his absence, but wanted to let y'all know that he got stage fright and will not be able to present today.
Stage fright's a real thing. Stage fright's a real thing. Yeah. Let's move on. Agenda number 8, which is really the meat of today's discussion, is the discussion and appropriate action on task 5. And I will turn the time over to Ron, I believe.
Awesome. Thank you, Neffy. Yes, we met with the technical committee, and we've been discussing our FMX list for quite some time. And if you have a magnifying glass in front of you, you can read through those quickly, and let me know of any no, that's so. It's yes, they're the same. They're just a abbreviated version. That's the first couple of columns, just so you can kind of see the description and see the, and then if you wanted to dig into more details, you could. So a little bit about where we're at in the process. So we've been updating that list. We've been collecting the data. To this point, I think one of the big questions is the consulting team has not removed any projects from the list unless they were non-flood related. They didn't meet the intent of the goals. And we found some of those, we got those projects out of some of the hazard mitigation plans and things of that nature. And so we were careful, we sifted through those. But other than that, if a project came to us, we have not removed it because we didn't like it or anything like that. So we collected those and we went through the sorting process, which is the spreadsheet, the long, tiny print spreadsheet that Derek doesn't like. I know. That's the one who gives me the hardest time about it, right? So we went through that spreadsheet and we've classified things the way we have it to this point as either an FME, an FMP, or an FMS. And at this time, these are all the projects that we intend to include in the draft plan. If we as we're going through this with the entities, if we find one that needs to be added, we would add it after the draft plan where y'all would have a chance to see it. So when we make the motion today to accept these, please note that this is the list that we will go forward with. Some could be removed, or some could change from an FME to an FMP as we get more data. What we're doing right now is the consulting teams are scheduling meetings with every entity that is on the list that has a project, and we're going through their projects in more detail to gather more information and to find out what things, to get the information that we still need, and to ask the question, is this the right project that you want? Are you in support of it? And of that nature. So there's several communities that are on there that they may be a little bit surprised about, hey, where did this project come from? A lot of the projects that you see on the list came from the River Authority's master plan. And so we will have representatives from the River Authority in those meetings with us so they can have a discussion of those projects. From previous discussions with their engineers, there has been some discussions, and some of those projects may have been weeded out. And so I need to make, for example, the city of San Antonio and some of the other lower communities, that may not be a project that we're going to recommend going forward. So those projects will be taken care of as we sift through there. But it would be on a basis of that's been vetted or for whatever reason. And we'll definitely highlight those if we remove them. Anything that we take off the list, we'll make sure that we highlight. But essentially, the list you have in front of you is the list we're asking for approval for today. And I can answer any questions you may have about any of the projects. I think most people are looking for a certain type of projects or looking at projects in their communities. So I urge you to do that. Again, this is all draft. There was nothing set in stone here. We have a chance to change it in the final, but part of what we're required to do is to say this is the list we're going forward with during the draft plan. So, Derek, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say there was I think a good dialogue, discussion, Q&A at the technical committee from a number of folks. But I also know it's a lot of information and can be a little overwhelming. So I would want to make sure, especially those that are not on the technical committee, that, this is, please, if you have questions before, we move forward to vote or comments or whatever, please ask them. Because it was a good dialogue. I think we answered everything well. But, it is a lot of information and sort of a little bit of an odd process at times.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure on the River Authority project, that is the holistic watershed-based master planning consistent with nature-based solutions, that project, is that the one that we discussed?
Yes.
Troy? And they've agreed to sponsor it?
Is there a particular number, Suzanne? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It is. I don't know. Is it in the, hold on. There's a staple there, so I can't get to, let me get, hold on. Give me a minute. It is number 199. Because I know that Troy and I, the Nature Conservancy has been working on similar type projects with others, environmental groups throughout the state, to look at generally assessments of the value of nature-based solutions in flood control, particularly in areas where that has not necessarily been assessed completely, so that there could be an opportunity to really do a full assessment of the benefit of nature, not only in it's a stacked benefits situation here, not only in flood benefits, but also what else you could get from that, from recharge and water quality, ecosystem services, that sort of thing. So I had been talking with Troy and other, we've talked about this in, other regions as well. And I'm happy if the River Authority is going to sponsor it. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that I confirm that that is something y'all are willing to take on to sponsor.
I think tentatively, yes, but we have not had a comprehensive discussion on everything that came out of the River Authority's master plans. So there may be cases where there is a more appropriate sponsor. So I think you should feel confident that somebody will sponsor it, and it's going to move forward. It's not a lack of sponsor, but we have to have an internal dialogue as this goes forward.
Because the way I understood it, and Anita could correct me if I'm wrong, or Ron, or whatever, but if there's a concern that this would fall off the list because the River Authority didn't want to take it on as a sponsor, if a nonprofit can sponsor it, we can't, I will put the Nature Conservancy's name on it. Now, when it comes to getting funding for it, I know I would have to find a funding sponsor, but just to get it in and make sure that it stays in the list, I will make sure that we can volunteer to put our name on it. Now,
It's going to stay in.
Okay,
I
all right.
want you to just feel
All
confident
right,
of that.
thank you.
Yeah, no worries there.
Okay.
But there may be, and I'm not speaking to that one in particular. It's just because of our inherent, sort of master planning role that we ended up in a number of them. It will stay in, but as we work through this, there may be somebody more appropriate in general for a particular project that would be a more suitable sponsor for whatever reason.
Okay. Because I'm sure that there could be a, a collaborative effort here, both public and private funding to help this, go forward. Thank you.
Is this available online for download?
It was sent out. I don't know. Yes.
I'm just wondering because I'm looking in here and I know we have member groups in a number of these areas. Is it okay if I share this list with our member groups? And okay,
Certainly.
great. And as far as that 199, do y'all have any like short synopsis or something that you could share with me?
For which project?
The 199.
199.
The one we just talked about, the holistic.
Yes, there is a short synopsis. Obviously, we didn't have a place to stuff it into the spreadsheet. And so as we go forward with the plan, we are going to be adding those descriptions into the overall plan for those. But yes, I can share something. I would love to have a chance to talk with the Sarah staff first, just to make sure that we're all on board internally with what that is before we share that.
And mainly, I'll just tell you because it's something that I would also like to float to our Guadalupe group.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly.
And there are other groups, I will tell you, that are interested in looking at it too. I've talked to some of the other regions, so I was hoping, we can circle back. I mean, we kind of sat around one day after one of the meetings here and kind of talked through it in concept. And I've fleshed it out a little bit more, but it does need to be looked at in detail.
I certainly appreciate you, Derek, mentioning that it needs to stay on. I certainly agree with it. It's not something that I wanted for us to forget about.
Right.
I think it's important that it not only stays on, but it's something that we're reminded constantly about it. I don't want it to just go away.
That actually brings up another thing that Ron and I were just going to talk about. We've had a couple of late things that got added into here or there's some things that we may still want to add in here specifically for Kendall County. There was an email that got lost somewhere. We don't know where, but one of the things that they mentioned was also that region-wide flood gauging and flood warning system. And so that's another one that we can probably sit down and have a similar discussion about how that's going to come together. Is it a watershed level or is it, a Sarah basin level? I mean, how's that going to happen? So those kinds of details are still to be fleshed out a little bit, but those go into the overall plan.
And just, Annalisa, we submitted a similar project for Region 3 up in Fort Worth. And, and I don't know exactly how this all, finalized here. And that's why I think it's going to be important to have a conversation once we see the details. But, it involved the scope of this would involve, having a lot of stakeholder input and making sure that we're looking holistically at these issues and kind of what we did, the Nature Conservancy did very successfully in Florida. We would like to bring that model that we did in Florida here because I think it has some opportunities to yield, yield more understanding of nature-based solutions, but also that the multi-benefit concept of what they bring in the watershed.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful. And so I guess I can work with you also for our Guadalupe group to move this forward.
Ron, a couple of additional questions. One, what about projects submitted by individuals, citizens? Who took on the sponsorship of that? Say a citizen submitted, hey, there's flooding in this channel within my community. Did we receive any projects like that? And consequently, who did we assign to be a sponsor or for any of those? Because I'm looking through this list and I see projects that really seem to be coming out of communities or organizations. I'm not seeing too many by individuals. Were there individuals that submitted individual projects?
We didn't have any individuals submit individual projects per se. We had them identify problem areas, and those were noted. But most of those had projects related to them.
Okay, right. So I want to make sure that projects that were identified by the public somehow get reflected on this. What I don't want is somebody submitting a project and it just stays in limbo, that we don't address that. But if you're saying that it was captured here, man, I wish there would be a way that we can go back and circle back with that citizen so that they know your comment was captured under this project for the such and such community. See what I'm saying?
We'll definitely work to do that, Neffy, after we wrap up these meetings with the individual communities. You know, for example, when we wrap up the meetings with Sarah, the city of San Antonio, everybody who's added some to the list.
And maybe it's something on a website that we identify or something, but I think I'll tell you, one of the things that we're struggling with is to get community to come out to our meetings, first of all. So those that do come out, I think their comments need to be very well, not only respected, but identified and then consequently followed up, because we need to build that trust. So that was my first question. The second question is, recognizing some of these projects, how did you determine the difference between an FMP, FME, and well, FMS, I know, but was there a certain level of design that you were looking for, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We followed the process that was approved by the planning group committee, where we went through that flow chart to identify that. And I think we had stepped through that process, which is basically the top of the sheet that you see there in gray. That process matches up to the flow chart that was provided by the Water Development Board and adopted by the Planning Group Committee. So, and we walked through it. It had to meet certain criteria to be an FMX. If it didn't meet that criteria, we looked at it for an FMP. If it didn't meet that criteria, went to an FME and so forth. And so in that sheet, it would be documented. You would be able to see why. If it hit a no, then it shifted it over. For the most part, the thing that kicked most projects out, right, was either that a cost estimate wasn't available and it wouldn't be easily reproducible, or a model wasn't available that they looked at downstream impacts, because that's a big one. Those are probably the two biggest ones that got them pushed off.
Just to clarify, not kicked out.
Not kicked out.
Down to an FME or an FMS.
Right. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, or it didn't have a BCA, because it had to have all of those things. Those are the three probably big things that it had to have, and that's what would kick it down.
And going back to what Ms. Peace was saying, and also my previous comment, and maybe the same response, is that communities that submitted, whether it's City of Balcones or City of Bernie, do they know that their project that they submitted fell in as an FME, for example? So I want to make sure that, and I know that right now we're on a time crunch, but I want to make sure that those sponsors know what category they fall in, because each category is going to have a different timeline, if you will, for whether it's funding or whatever. I want to make sure that they understand, the sponsors, whether it's Barrett, Kendall, Goliad, that they understand that what they submitted, we have it categorized as an FMP, FME, or whatever.
We're starting to schedule those meetings with each community now that we've had them categorized. We're going to meet with each individual, the City of San Antonio, Bernie, Bexar County, everyone, and say, here are the projects we have for you. This is your FMPs, this is your FMEs, this is your FMSs. Here's the information we still need to make it to, if you want it to be an FMP, well, this is the information it's lacking. And so we're going to work through that to try to get as many as we can.
Perfect.
Bumped back up.
Thank you.
Ron, about how many are in each category right now?
I think they're the last number, and don't quote me too hard on these, but we had around 250 total projects, 250 to 300 projects, and there was about 60 FMPs. I know that's the one that most people are worried about. And then the bulk of it, I want to say 100, what was that? Yeah. Oh,
On your cheat sheet, the letter-sized packet, you'll find them on top of the FMP, FME, and FMS columns.
so to get that, right now there's 38 FMPs, 185 FMEs, and 43 FMSs.
And I guess, and maybe I'm missing it, but I'm not seeing the city of shirts from our meeting. The issues that they brought up.
They brought them up, but they have not yet
Submitted
a project.
That was.
I know, but okay, but this is where I'm confused. Why do we have the public input process then? If someone brings it up at that meeting, it seems like it should be on a list so that we can.
Ron, can you kind of go back and explain the whole, what a sponsor, who a sponsor can be and what they have to do? You know, it's not just, there actually has to be a sponsor and defined details that go with it. It's not just tracking a list of problems.
No, I understand that. The city of Shirts had a project. They had identified it on the map.
And we've reached out, we've had numerous conversations with them and have asked for projects for them. And we have not received anything through that correspondence. And so it's kind of hard to say they're going to sponsor something if we can't get them to give us a project.
And they're not the only community that has identified things that they were going to get to us and has not. And that's what I wanted to bring up. I think that's where we have to stay a little flexible between now and next January, right? If another one of these communities comes forward and says, hey, we've got this, you know, we don't want to take 50 more projects, but if they've got a few priority projects, I think we need to stay flexible to be able to incorporate those.
Because this is a draft. You know, the draft has to be submitted, but there is the opportunity to add, you know, before the final.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't know what extent we're expecting the consultant team to go to when they've repeatedly asked a potential sponsor for their project information. They haven't gotten it to us. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink to it after a certain point.
But they may not have enough. I mean, the city of Shirts may not have the detail that's necessary, but it could be an FME.
Yeah.
I'm
all they
not
have to tell us
100%.
is-
I'd have to go back and look and be sure from that one, Suzanne. That one might be identified. Is it identified in the civil open master plan?
No, it's not.
No.
No. We've made that clear. I mean, we started out all of our contacts with a phone call to explain exactly that, just what we needed, and to tell them, if you don't know what the project is, that's great. Just tell us where your problem areas are and confirm that these are ones that you want to include in the plan. And we're still, they said they would, and they just haven't delivered on the information that we need to incorporate.
So I guess a general question I have for the group is, the month of July, when y'all are scrambling to get the draft report, final draft in and done, is it better time spent calling those have projects that haven't given you anything, rather than going back to those that gave you information, but if they give you 3 more things, they'll jump a category, which is because there's not time for all of it.
No.
At this time, we do not plan to add more projects to this list for the draft August submittal. If Jeff comes to me and says, hey, I got one I want to add, we can add it August 2nd and get it into the final plan.
So that'll be the
that way you will
post-submittal.
come in, that way I can say, hey, Kara, here's the new list. You have a chance to look at it and view it. I don't want to add something here at the end and after we approve this list. Listen, what we're going the goal is to approve what we have so far. Let's get as much information we can of those, and we know we're going to have somebody said, ooh, you forgot me, and hopefully we can get those in. And obviously, as we're vetting through the process, we may jog people's memory, or things may say, for the city, it may like, okay, we don't want this one, but we may add this. There could be different things go, and we could see projects get added. I can see projects getting added to the list, and as the consulting team, we're not saying no, we're not going to add any more. If somebody came with 100 more, it may be a big eye opener, but I don't see that. So the 1 or 2 more, the communities that may come back and add some projects, we're open to that. It's just not going to make it into the draft submittal.
Okay, what about Bear County?
Bear County is in there.
Where are theirs?
Is it? It may be the last one.
just one project?
Yes, most of the projects when we talked with Dave and his team, they're captured in the master plans, Sarah's master plans, and the project that we have on the list is looking at multi-jurisdictional low water crossings that cross into the different counties and so that's the one we put the focus on. That isn't really right now that the county felt that didn't have a project. Okay.
Okay, so, all right. So I just want to make sure that I understand the process, because I'm very sensitive to what Neffy said about the public input. I mean, we go and have a public, hardly anyone comes. The people that do come and do bring up something, and then it's not on the list and they can't get on the draft, but yet if they're sitting around the table, they can get their project on the list after this deadline for today. I just want to make sure that is that fair? Is that right?
Well, that's the Water Development Board rules. I mean, if it didn't have a project sponsor, which is basically a governmental entity, it's not eligible to go on a list.
Okay, but I thought that we just said that anyone, this is the note that came out to all of us. Anyone can sponsor a project. They can't be a funder, but I think we got a memo that said anyone can sponsor a project. Anyone.
Yes, I think that's correct. I think anyone can sponsor a project, but I think at this time, I don't know if there was an individual. We did get projects, but most of those projects and comments that you see on the map were provided by some entity. There were a couple projects that were identified that didn't meet the requirements of being an FME, an FMP, or an FMS. And there were a couple that I think were captured in some of the projects that the city had, or that that we had up in our northern counties up there. I can't remember if it was the county or the
And Ron, I will tell you that I have had a handful of individuals call me and email me directly because my email's on there, specifically asking about, I want this project included, and I've directed them to attend the meeting and present that. Now, it happens to be that 3 of those I personally knew that there was a project that either the city of San Antonio was submitting or Bexar County was submitting that encompassed that problem area. There was 2 of them, that one was in Helotes, and I wasn't sure about that one. So that's why your answer satisfied my question, but I want to make sure that the public and we all understand that if we're submitting a problem area as a citizen, that we are checking to make sure that that municipality, whether it's the county or the city, knows about it and can consequently be a sponsor to it. But so what I'm hearing from you is that all of those that have been submitted to date, you have found a project that would address that individual issue, correct?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, and I will do the committee the planning group a favor, and I will make sure when we get back as we're going through this process, we're going to take all the comments and all the projects and from everything that we have, and I will double verify. I will write the list of projects that were by individuals. I'll get those on a list that we actually formally received and correspond them to either a project or by a sponsor. If I find one that hasn't, I'll reach out to them and get more information, and I'll start that dialogue to let them know they're going to be in the plan.
Thank you.
But I think they've been caught. But if there's any that haven't, and I will get you a list by the next meeting and report back on that.
And the city of Church would fall into that same category, because it was an individual. There was also a citizen there that mentioned it.
Absolutely, I can include that.
If you can't say that the city manager is good enough, the citizen that was there, he brought it up and said, this is a flooding area. And you said, yes, we've recognized that one. So they may have thought, okay, they recognize that one.
When we asked for 2 things. We asked for the people to identify flooding issues that we weren't aware about. And when he was identifying the flooding area, we had that one, right? If it's covered with the flood map, we have that identified as a risk. He never provided a project, or there wasn't a project associated with that.
Okay, well, I guess, and I know we're just spending too much time on this, but this is, I mean, I feel responsible as the outreach committee because I don't want to oversell the fact that if someone comes to a meeting, whether it's at the meetings that we've had or the meetings that we're going to have, a citizen is not going to have the knowledge to tell you that should be a channelization project. Oh, maybe it should be a floodplain protection project. They don't know. They know it's flooding in that area and would like for it to be addressed. So we either put it on as a study that says study this area because we don't know what the response, because no one has put it on the list. There's not an entity that has identified it. That's fine. But if this process is assuming that every citizen that brings up a flooding issue knows how to solve it, then that's not really, then we need to tell people, come in public meeting, explain, tell yourself, come with an answer, come with some sort of engineered solution for it to make the plan. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And I don't think that's what everyone expects.
Yeah, and Suzanne, let me mention that, the list is 266 projects, and that's amazing. That's incredible that we have that. But, I am struggling with rectifying the fact that, we really haven't had a lot of participation. You mentioned 5 individuals in this meeting, 2, maybe 5, 6 in this other. To make sure that their point is captured is certainly very important. It's important that we do that to gain the trust and so forth. I want to make sure that we are being as transparent with this process, that projects that are identified either by the city of Schertz or by an individual that are captured, and that we show them, we identify them, and we provide, just like you have, because this is great. And I appreciate the Water Development Board developing these steps to help us understand, because the big issue, if I'm the city of Runge, I like to pick on the city of Runge, I like that name. If I'm the city of Runge, I want to make sure that my concern is addressed. And if I see here that I'm missing a benefit to cost ratio, or I'm missing a cost estimate, I want to be able to see that and hear from you, hey, if you do this, it's going to bump you up. It's that transparency, and it's that ability to know this is what we're missing. It may be that as the city of Runge, I said, you know what, that's all I can give you. That's all I have right now. Okay, well, then that's what it's going to, but then that gives me an idea of how long it's going to take. Okay, we got to do a study first before it becomes a project. And that helps me understand the process. So I want to make sure that we're being respectful to the municipalities and organizations that have put time and effort into this, that they understand the process that we're following, which you clearly have identified here. I want to make sure that it's available online, that people can access it. I want to make sure that we're going back somehow to the citizen that's submitting a problem to identify that, yes, your flooding on your property and your issue is being addressed, and it's being addressed through this project that the county has proposed. We need to identify that, because if we don't, and we let projects just disappear, we're not going to gain the trust. We're not being as forthright and correct as we should be. So first of all, thank you for this information, and let's make sure and get it online so people can see it and understand it. And then let's make sure and circle back, whether it's with the municipalities or the individuals.
Question. Okay, so you said, because I know that there were some issues with individuals in Kendall County in certain areas, and also, so you said you would have, I guess, a list or something available by the next meeting to see if it's City of Bernie or whoever had addressed those problems, because I'd like to be able to send that to them, to say, hey, look.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have that. We'll all the public comments that we received, will correspond it to a project if available.
I really appreciate that.
And that was my question as well. So of all the municipalities and all the counties that are in our region, will that list, you have like a table that says, we heard from these and these we haven't heard from at all? Because I think that'd be interesting, because I know there's a bunch of cities and counties that aren't on this list.
Yes, we can provide a list as well of the county, of the entities, because we've contacted all of them. And only the counties that you see on here, except for one, has are counties or municipalities.
So will it be with the meeting materials or what?
I'll
format?
present it at the next meeting.
Oh, you'll present it. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
great. Thank you.
And, Dave, can I just ask you to clarify your situation with Bear County, just to make sure that I understand? So you're saying that any of the projects that Bear County would have identified as future flood control projects on your list, they are not, you're not submitting them for this purpose on this list?
I'm saying that most of what Bear County does for flood controls is of a regional basis, and we almost always. Fine, sorry about that. Yeah, Bear County's projects for flood control are generally at a regional basis, and we draw those directly from the San Antonio River Authority master plans and damage centers. So that covers most of it. There's a couple of other ones that we've discussed with Mr. Brannion that I need to coordinate with him to see to make sure they've been captured under the larger damage center areas. The one that's on there, it's not real well defined, but there's been a number of identified low water crossings, specifically at the border of county to county, where nobody wants to take responsibility for building a bridge into somebody else's county. This was a good opportunity for us to coordinate with multiple counties and find a funding source to solve that difficult situation.
Okay, so then explain to me, just so I understand, if you're saying that all Bear County's regional projects are included under one of the SARA projects that are listed here, can you consultants tell me which of these SARA projects capture all of the projects that have been identified in their watershed master plans for consideration in this list? And if it's captured in the overall SARA watershed master plans that they've done by watershed, can you just explain to me where that's covered so I can make sure that I understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm not seeing it under the SARA list.
Yes, as you're saying that it's on there as it's not on Sarah's list.
What Dave said was all of the county projects, the regional county projects that have been identified and vetted through SARA's watershed master plans by each of the watersheds where those capital projects are identified, that form the list potentially that they would look at to fund in some future funding scenario. He's saying his projects are covered for this state list in a SARA, the way I understood it, in SARA's master plans, individual watershed master plans. So I'm just trying to now tie that back to where is the list that says SARA's Leon Creek master plan, all projects, SARA's San Antonio River Basin master plan, all projects.
It's not broken up that way.
Okay, so how would I know that they're here?
We pulled the individual projects. We worked with the River Authority to provide us the projects off the master plan that were recommended to go forward. And we put those to their individual communities. If it fell in Helotes, it fell in Helotes, and they were probably listed as the sponsor. And that's why if it was in San Antonio, they were listed as San Antonio, and they're going to sit at the table with us for any of those.
If it was in the unincorporated area of Bear County, not in a municipality, but in the unincorporated area of Bear County, it would have been listed under Bear County if there was a project in those other master plans that were in the unincorporated area of Bear County.
They would either be under Bear County or the River Authority.
Okay, well, they're not under the River Authority. So I'm assuming they're not under Bear County because they have one project listed.
That is correct.
Okay, so Sarah, that's okay with you? I mean, that's the way you understand. There's no just Bear County project in your master plans that would be in an unincorporated area, not in another jurisdiction. So that covers what he's saying.
Well, that is a little bit.
Because these are just
the individual
studies.
Sarah ones are not from the master plans. The ones they have gone through and allocated the ones from the master plans to the communities. A lot of times Bear counties are in another city. So, right, like.
And I assume also that there are specific.
But there
if
are
there-
just a couple that I wanted to meet with them. I mean, we're scheduling all these meetings to get into the details because I had a question about whether they were Medina County or Bear County, but I was trusting that they mapped it.
Okay.
And identified the county. But yeah, the Medina watershed master plan had a few that were in unincorporated areas, but I think they're falling into Medina County.
Okay.
Dave, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of those projects that are in there as Sarah, if they're identified Sarah projects, Bear County would choose to sponsor those. I'm assuming that's not an issue at any given point. They just happen to be the agency who has the projects and the damage centers identified at this current moment.
Can you guys explain to me what item 208 is? Is that related to this or is that different item? Item 208 states it's on the Sarah wish list. It has an asterisk, other suburban city projects and project description. Is that like a placeholder for other projects? Can you explain what that is, please?
That was a placeholder that, for as we were going through it. That was a good catch. We had that comment. Erin added that she wanted to make sure that we were capturing the intent of all the other suburban cities as far as projects that were out of their master plan. Right.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be removed from the list.
Yeah, and we're gonna that's one that'll be removed. Yep. Good catch, Eagle Eye.
Even though it's little font. Any other comments? Anybody online? I don't see anyone online. Any committee members that may be online? Any questions you may have about this list?
And we kind of mentioned it a couple times. I do want to say that this is the list we're asking for approval today. There are 3 to 5 projects. I don't know the exact number, but there's 3 to 5 projects. We'll leave it at 5 in case there's. I know there's not any more than that. That we'd received in an email. They got lost from Kendall County, and so their projects. We've looked through this. Some I think are covered by Jeff's projects. Some they're going to stand alone. But we're going to look at their projects and we're going to make sure that their projects get added because they have reached out to us. And so at this point, they've reached out to us. So we're going to add their projects to the list. Just haven't classified them yet. We got that email at the technical committee meeting. We finally got that issue rectified and just didn't have time to get it on the list for today. But so the list will be as presented. No more projects will enter the list other than the 5 possible from Kendall County.
One of those is the stream gauging and flood warning system too. So that one probably rolls up under one of the other FMSs, and 2 of them were specific areas that I know we studied for Bernie. So I think they're already covered, Jeff, but we'll talk about those. But I've got somebody looking at them right now to confirm which way they go.
Do you have a comment?
I was just going to say, I think my recommendation to the committee is to approve the list as is, in addition to the Kendall County ones that Ron just mentioned, knowing that, in order to get to the place where we can get the draft report in at the beginning of August, we have to, cut off somewhere. But all those things that we've just talked about, the verification, that the citizen feedback can be traced back, that the city or county or wherever those projects that were identified came from can be traced back, those can be added in after we get the draft report in. So they're not being missed. It's just we need a cut point to make sure the report can get submitted in a timely manner in August.
And I want to make sure that we understand what you're saying. It's draft.
It's draft.
This is a draft. So we're still going to have time to make adjustments, but we need to stop so that you can get your job done, put everything in the format that you need, and then we need to submit a draft list to move forward. Because I mean, I'm feeling like I want to dig in a little bit more, but I recognize time is of the essence. Is there any other concerns or comments regarding this? Dave, Kara, you guys have been quiet today. We good? Okay. Anybody else online? Otherwise, let's
No real concern, but I just had a question. Eventually, when we're prioritizing this, how, the chart that y'all gave is fairly, high level. How would you, for example, assign or figure out the reduction in risk that these projects?
This is Derek. I just a reminder, we as the Region 12 are not prioritizing. That is TWDB's role in this. We are simply giving them the list and the information that were provided. They have not released their evaluation criteria or weighting yet. So right now it is, in a sense, a data gathering exercise.
Good, because that would be very hard to do. That was helpful. Thank you.
And Doris, one of the things that we are going to do, kind of maybe to answer a little bit of that question, is as soon as we get the projects, we'll be able to identify how many acres, critical infrastructure, structures, all the above are at risk. And then we'll be able to make assumptions once we put projects in place, how many are taken out, removed from that risk. And that will be, that'll be the next big part of the effort once we get more information, because once we actually put them into their list, that's where we will identify all that critical information. And that's when we'll be able to see how big of an impact they can have.
Okay.
So just a reminder that today's approval, today's action is to approve the list of FMXs, not necessarily the buckets that they're sorted in. The buckets being, is it a flood management evaluation? Is it a flood management strategy? Or is it a flood management, flood mitigation project? Not an FMP or FME or FNS. It's not, we're not approving that today. We're approving the project list. Those buckets will get sorted as we move forward. Okay. All right. So let me, if we're ready to vote on this. Oh, Kendall has a motion.
I would like to request a motion to approve the FMX list presented today, as well as the potential submittals from Kendall County.
I second that.
I'll move, and Kendall can't move.
And Derek seconded, so. Or however we're going to do it. Yeah. So, okay, so let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That was great. Motion passes. Whew. That was a big one. That was good. One step closer.
That's it.
One step closer. Congratulations. Thank you all. All right. Agenda item number 9, discussion and appropriate action regarding the proposed changes to the Texas Water Development Board informal comments. So let me turn the time over to the consultants.
Awesome. Thank you, Neffy. So as reported back in previous meetings, we received comments on our technical memorandums, technical memo that we provided earlier this year. In your agenda packet, I think page 4 or 5, the first one that we have there is task 4B. Identification and evaluation of potential FMEs, FMPs, FMSs, and this is the process that we approve Neffy, and this is what's on the spreadsheet there. If you flip one page, you can see the page to your right, you'll see some red text. This red text was provided to us by the Water Development Board and said that in order to be compliant, this is what we had to add. And so we didn't see anything in there that really changed the process, just gave a little bit more description as to that. So the first thing that we'll be asking for is approval of, because we had the two things we had here, we did have to vote on in order to approve this process. So I need approval to amend what we had previously approved with the language provided by the Water Development Board.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We previously approved this document. I remember we approved this. When this document went to the Texas Water Development Board, they had additional informal comments. And those comments are identified here in red. And does everybody have this document? It's within the package that you were given. So please look at that. The text in red is what the Water Development Board asked us to include as a part of this document. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then we would have a motion to amend. What's the name of this document?
To amend
Task
Task
4B.
4B.
And if there's any of those you'd like me to go over.
Let's give the time to discussion
Yes,
at this point.
if there's any
before
time
we
you want me to
decide
go over
vote.
any
So,
of those.
Is there any questions, Suzanne?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
And Doris, we have a
Doris.
second. Let's go into discussion before we actually make a vote. So any discussion about these points? If not, I'm going to ask the consultant if you can kind of go over them, and I'm kind of interested if it, as you go over it, is there anything that changes the original intent of what we were trying to do?
Sure. The first one is talking, all it said was it's what we've always talked about. I think in here I think we had it written as projects needed a cost benefit ratio of greater than 1. This says potential projects are preferred to have an estimated cost benefit ratio of greater than 1. If less than 1, projects may still be considered with the additional justification. So we had talked about some of those projects and how that would go. The two things that were added are potential strategies and projects must include a description of residual, post-project, and future risk. That's it's just stated here. We knew we had to talk about downstream risk. It's just formally stated there. And then potential strategies and projects must indicate potential use of federal funds or other sources. And that's part of the Chapter 9, the funding. Those things are both going to be done, Neffy, as both part of it. They just wanted it formally stated in the process.
Was there any other comments? I guess those are it.
Ms.
Yeah, so it
Coates?
sounds like it didn't change anything. It just clarified.
That's correct. That's
That is
what I'm
correct.
saying. All right. Hearing no more discussion, let's hear the motion. Do we have a motion?
Ms. Scott
It was on
motion
the
to amend
table. It
Task
was second.
4B.
So at that point, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item passes.
The second item, same nature as the first. It's the goals list. Again, hope you have your reading glasses. I know these tables are hard to read. But essentially, this one we'd already discussed. I think I can't remember if it was in a technical committee meeting or an outreach, but it was the question was we had a goal about the floodplain manager's toolbox, and we said we would provide certificates, and the question came back, what kind of certificates, or what do you mean by certificates? So we changed that a little bit and where we put it. So the proposal that we were asking you for approval today is to change that goal, not the intent of the goal, just the clarification and the rewording to increase the proficiency of stakeholders and floodplain managers across the region through training from Region 12 entities, TFMA, ASFPM, and FEMA, and provide certificates of completion. And then it was improve 50% of the knowledge of nature-based solutions, floodplain preservation, and cost benefit of traditional structural solutions. So we kind of decoupled those. It was kind of made up in the committee that we discussed to really make the stakeholders outreach. That's where we provide the certificate of completion. And then that we're just going to improve the knowledge of the nature-based solutions through the classes and things that we were going to provide. And then that was the short term and the long term goal. Just the only thing that changes was the going from 50 to 100% in that. But same things, just adding it a certificate of completion and then changing where that falls into the text. So pretty straightforward.
It sounds like just editing.
It is, but it changes the goal. It changes the word of the goal. I have to bring it, make sure that I don't want any questions on us.
Okay. So can I get a motion for approval of Exhibit C, Table 11, as identified in this package?
Move to approve.
In a second.
Second.
And any other discussion about this? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay. Item passes. And I think that covers all the edits that we have from the Texas Water Development Board.
The rest of the comments, Neffy, have been addressed. No formal comments have to be. We address them internally. That way we can have them in case anything questions get asked. Most of it was editing, or a lot of it was over the tables and formatting of those things.
Editing and formatting was the issues.
Yeah, just the wording, and it was what we were including, clarifications on what we were including. The one was the city wasn't included, and making sure how some of the different entities were organized. It's more just clarification on some things. And then we got 2 rounds of comments. The second round of comments came on all the GIS information, and a lot of that was adding fields, deleting fields, clarifying what they were asking for in their fields. So
I do have a question about that, because I'm wondering, did you have to do any additional GIS work? Just because not every city is going to have GIS capability as, say, the city of San Antonio, who has an entire department. Other communities may not have that ability. Did you guys have any challenges with that?
We had hours and hours of GIS processing with the floodplains. That was our biggest, everything that came from the floodplains and how that, and then everything folded from that with the risk maps, and not the risk maps that your FEMA risk map, but the risk identification maps. But the floodplain, merging those floodplains from the different sources, and then extending the floodplains for the future, all of that, very heavy GIS.
So there was
effort.
some strong technical work that needed to be done to do that. Okay, good. Any other further discussions on item number 9? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 10. Discussion regarding the allocation of additional funding.
So I think there were some questions last time on what we were going to do with the additional funds that were allocated from the Water Development Board. And here's a breakdown. This is pretty new to me. This is the contract between Sarah and the Water Development Board. That is not a contract between Sarah and the consulting team. So I will have to, we'll be conforming to these scope items. And so you can see there, we're adding money and this is pretty common the way they, I think this was pretty straightforward how they broke down all of the funds to all of the regions. They added a task 11. The top task is task 11, task 12, and task 13 is kind of how it's broken up per the Water Development Board scope. And so additional there was a lot more outreach and data collection, they realized, so they've allocated some money there. And then preparation and adoption of the regional flood plans. There was a lot of money added there for, in the first rounds was that we were doing these, they really didn't have a line item for adoption of the flood plan. It was all lumped into the chapters, and so they added more money because after discussions with all the regions how they were allocating their money. And then the big chunk of money, and I think the question was with this group, is perform identified flood management evaluations, identify, evaluate, and recommend. That's the additional informations on the FME. That's the digging into the FMEs and can we make them FMPs? And so that's where that bucket of money is intended to go.
So I want to remind the planning group that this was an amendment to the scope of work that was approved by the planning group back in November. The purpose of this today was just to bring it back because there was a question last month.
So this was an amendment to your contract with them.
And it will be amended in the contract with Sarah and HDR and the subcontract that needs to be submitted to TWDB. It is processing at this time.
Okay. I was gonna say, you're gonna throw a big party. No. Any other comments on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to some reports, some updates. I'll turn the time over to Suzanne. I'm sorry, Doris. Doris, do you have an update for us on the, as a regional liaison?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to get everything connected. Switched over. Yeah, so on Region 11, they're working through the different tasks to meet the August 1st deadline, just like we are. And they meet again this Wednesday. Only a couple of their items were complete, meaning the task, and others ranged in completeness. But I would say they were more than 50% done because quite a few of them were pretty far along. I think a couple of the last ones still needed a fair amount of work. And then on their FMXs, their group is voting on each one individually. So the whole team is, everybody on that committee is reviewing each one, and but they can group them. But the idea is that each one would be studied and understood by the committee. So it's a little different than ours, but they did comment that it was going to be hard to evaluate the flood risk reduction because the studies haven't been done yet. So that was where one of that questions earlier that I had came from. So, they have a couple of meetings coming up in September where they're going to meet, and then they'll have the public and they'll take comments after. So September 7th, they're going to be in Kerrville, and they'll meet at 4:30, and then they'll take their comment at 5:30. And then in Victoria, mid-September, let me see, they haven't finalized that date yet. The same thing, they'll meet, have a short meeting, and then they'll take the public comments after. So one thing I guess I was wondering about, that's all I had on the report update from their committee, but I was thinking about the public comment, and when you go to their webpage, their Regional 11 meetings are highly visible on their website. And their meetings are in person only, so you have to attend. But I was thinking about our meetings, and I was thinking that I don't see our meetings on our website unless I kind of just missed it accidentally. But I was wondering, are they on there? The last ones were the public input meetings that we had, but we often ask for if there's any public comment at our meetings. But I don't know how the public would even know about our meetings, when you compare our website to theirs. So that's
Yes,
the end of my comments.
Doris, thank you for that update. I certainly appreciate it. With regard to your questions, I do know, I'm going to let Ron kind of talk a little bit about that, but I do know that they've done a really good job of not only posting it on the website, I've seen it on the website, but I've also seen it even on social media. I know these last few meetings in the county, there was a pretty strong effort to get it out to Twitter and LinkedIn, and I think I even saw it on Facebook too. So I did see some strong social media outreach on that, but
She's talking about
the public outreach are on there. They're highly visible. But like this particular meeting where we asked for public comment, I don't know how anybody could give us public comment because I don't think they I can't see them. I couldn't find the meetings. So if they're on there, they're hard to find. But
I got it.
Yeah.
There is a tab for meeting materials. There's 20, it breaks down per year. Then it has the agenda, all of the meeting materials itself, the meeting minutes, and a recording of the meeting are all available online. They are posted on the website at the River Authority and on the Texas Secretary of State website.
Yeah,
Maybe
they're
what
just a
she's
little
suggesting
harder
is,
to
maybe we
find.
need to put on the front page, up next meeting, July 14th.
A banner or something like that.
Something that it's right on the front page. And then you can get the meeting materials like Kendall's mentioning, all the background materials. But if you said next meeting, July 14th, and click here for materials, then it would just get you to the same spot. It would just be a little bit more on the front part of the website, I think.
A lot less navigation. I figured I could probably eventually find the meeting agendas if I dug, but I was like, for somebody not familiar with our website, it would be a little hard, I think, for them to find these particular meetings. So that's all I had.
Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the feedback, Doris. Certainly something I asked if you guys can please take a look at that.
We will.
The next item.
Oh, do you want from
Yes.
Senate? Oh, okay.
By all means, please.
Yeah, for our Guadalupe group, we're doing the same thing as everybody's doing, I guess. We have a little bit different process because our contractors send us the drafts, and then we comment. They get back to us. They post all the comments that all of us have made. So we don't have any subcommittees like y'all do. So it's a little bit different process, but it's been pretty arduous. I mean, we've been getting chapters, draft chapters to go over pretty much every other day, and submitting comment sheets. And we have our next meeting on Wednesday. They have told us in no uncertain terms that all of our comments that we want to have incorporated into the draft have to be in by tomorrow so that it can be presented and approved by the group on Wednesday.
Is your region also reviewing every single project, or like Region 11 or not?
You guys, your contractors did a beautiful job with this. Frankly, I could not. They sent us the PDF with all the projects on it, and I couldn't open it. It crashed my computer. So, but yeah, we are supposed to be reviewing all the projects, and I know our group had some projects that were discussions where some of the projects were totally inappropriate, and we wanted to take them off the list and like that.
Annalisa, has there been any discussion in your region about circling back with the public or the other agencies?
It's interesting for me to hear these discussions because we haven't really had these discussions on how our contractors are getting feedbacks from the local governments. The list that y'all have of projects is much more complete and detailed than what we have, but most of ours look like placeholders, frankly. So I think, in this and the detail that you have in these projects, I think you're further along. Our contractors have been, they have completed the text drafts for our review of, and all the mapping and everything from chapters 1 through 9. So it's just I guess, going into different tasks.
Yeah, and so it's kind of going in just to kind of where we're at on the drafts. The first meeting in July is to review chapters 1 through 4, which we'll have drafts out prior to that for y'all to start reviewing. But we'll take comments, and then we're gonna allow. And then the next meeting we're gonna go over chapters 5 through 10, and we'll have those in the we broke it up for y'all, and instead of piecemealing it. Because we kind of had the discussion with the technical committee. Do you want us to piecemeal this one at a time, or do you want it in chunks? So we decided to go in chunks, so breaking it up into 2 chunks, go the first half, the second half. And so those are where we're going to break up the meetings, and then we're going to take comment from the group all the way up into that. We'll have a cutoff at that meeting, at the second meeting in July. No more comments passed here to give us a week to finish up and get the draft plan.
I do have a question. I'm interested. I'm still stuck with Doris's comment that in Region 11, they're reviewing every single project. Is there any value to doing that on a draft? I mean,
essentially, Neffy, kind of the way that we feel on that in the approach that we took. We're going through those projects with the entities, and we're getting into that detail. We're touching every single project. Just don't know if y'all have to touch, spend the time. I mean, that's kind of what our job is.
And that's kind of what I'm
As a
struggling with.
member of the
I were-
technical committee, no, we don't. I mean, we're paying them to do it. Ron will hold this over me forever, and they're more than qualified to do that. Yeah, I mean, but that's what our consultants are here for. And the other reason I don't think we as a committee need to review every project, to Derek's point earlier, we don't get to prioritize them. If we got to say these are more valuable and meet our goals, which sometimes I wonder, why do we have all this time on goals when they don't factor into the process at all? It doesn't matter what goes on this list because we don't get any input in the value of those projects. It is purely anybody can submit a project, and if it fits these boxes, goes on the list, they're capable of determining if it meets those boxes.
Kara, thank you for saying that. I want to make sure that we go on the record with that, because it is a situation where while this committee, we do have oversight and we do have the opportunity to review this, we're not the ones making the decision at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it is the Texas Water Development Board, and we are facilitating these projects to making sure they get on the list. And that's really our job, is to make sure that these projects are included and that all of these boxes get checked so that they can go to the Water Development Board where they're going to get prioritized. So I want to make sure that anybody that's listening and all of us understand our role in that.
And I will say at the technical committee, especially that very first meeting where they started bringing us projects, we had a lot of conversation about, we looked at some examples of a P and E and S, and why they were in the categories they were. And some, when it would be as simple as, if we only had this one piece of information, it would have stayed a project, but we don't. And we had a lot of discussion on, hey, is it the role of the consultant to fill in those gaps, or is it the role of the consultant to go back as quickly as possible to the entities that submitted it and say, hey, if you only gave us this additional info, we can move you into a different category, or it may increase your, and none of us know yet the criteria Water Development Board's going to use. So we can't say, hey, got a better shot if you had this, but we can at least talk about which category it fits in. Certainly there was time with the early submittals to quickly reach out and say, hey, Jeff, these 3 projects, if you just did a little bit more info and paid your other consultant sitting down there to do it, then, it might be a little bit better. And so we had a lot of conversation about how to do that and how to spend that additional money we just talked about and their time and be effective, so that we weren't just stranding things because they were missing a little bit of information. That was really where we spend our time and effort, is, hey guys, make sure that as you go through this, if there is something that could be noted that really would improve the category or maybe the understanding of the project, that was ultimately, clarified and communicated back to whoever submitted it. That's what I felt like we could do. The rest, it's just put it in a spreadsheet and turn it in.
Yes.
Because for the Guadalupe group, we had 2 projects in particular that were clearly, one of them was just kind of stupid, and and one would clearly cause damage, especially downstream, because they had put in that they wanted to strip the vegetation from the banks to increase velocity and volume of, waterway. And so in those instances, I think that our group's reaction was, no, that doesn't make it on the list. And I think it's really important to reserve the ability to take off projects that are clearly not suitable.
But Annalise, I would also venture to say that the system that the Water Development Board has created would automatically take care of that versus having Derek say, oh, that project stinks, I'm getting rid of it. The system itself, or as I like to refer to it as the filter itself, takes care of those things and make sure we're not having an adverse impact, that make sure that there is a benefit. And that's what I think is important. And that's why I appreciate the time and effort that this committee has taken to understand these categories. And now we're in a situation where we're not the ones judging the merits of a project because the system itself does that.
And I'd like to just comment on something that Kara said, because I think it's very important and probably should be included in our chapter 8 regarding, process improvements, is exactly what she said about the goals and how these projects are advancing these goals. One, we don't have to quantify. I mean, you do have to quantify, I think, the, protection, how many structures will come out of the floodplain, that sort of thing. But which is great. I mean, and I think that that's something that we want to highlight in the public meeting process is cumulatively what did we have going in and what would we have if these projects were implemented as far as benefit goes. But the challenge about the goals and the tracking of the goals is no one has that job. No one has the job of deciding how this effort is going to ultimately move us toward the goals and objectives that have been set forth in this plan. I don't know how the Water Development Board is going to do that. That's not clear, and nor have they tasked anyone, the River Authority or consultants or anybody like that, to track these projects, what gets done and how does it satisfy the goals. Now, maybe they'll do that as we get ready for the next cycle or as projects are going in, someone's tracking that. But again, I think that's something that's important, that role should, if you're going to have goals, then there needs to be some process by which those goals are tracked over time.
Can I suggest that we ask the Water Development Board what they intend to do with our goals?
We can, or we can just put it in the chapter 8 to make sure that we identify it as a process improvement that needs to be clarified, because I think it's important that somebody do it. I mean, and granted, those goals may not be real, but some of the goals are, we're doing more public outreach. Well, that doesn't require a project to be improved. Well, who's going to do that public outreach? Who's going to be tasked with that? How are we going to know that it's being done? None of the communities that have to report. I mean, it's all very voluntary in its tracking.
Okay, hey, Nikki, it's Anita. Can I just jump in?
Oh, please.
Just to follow up on what she was saying, I will say that so far my leadership has shared that we want to see what all of the region's goals are when we start to draft our state flood plan, to get a better understanding of what the needs are across the state as a whole. As far as tracking the process of each individual region's goals, we are going to leave that entirely up for the RFPG to determine on their own.
Anita, this is Derek. I will say, as the administrative entity, that is potentially extremely time consuming, and that costs money. I'm being blunt, but to do the effort like is being contemplated doesn't just happen with free staff time.
Right. For now, that's all the guidance they gave us in regards to the goals. I will say, if y'all want any elaboration or alternatives, please send me an email with that request so I could forward it up to my leadership and try to get you a better answer or more.
Anita, and that's exactly what I was thinking about. If we can formulate some kind of email comment or request, that I think would help you. In the interest of time, I actually led us down this side road here. I'm sorry. I know I started it, and I saw a squirrel and I started chasing it, and you guys all followed. So let's, now that the regional liaison update has been concluded, let's go to item number 12, public comment. Kendall, do we have any public comment that have signed up since?
No, sir, there are no public comments at
No
this time.
comments. Great. Let's move on to item 13, dates and potential agenda items for next meeting. So far, we have July 14th at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock? Oh, the Outreach Committee, July 14th at 1 p.m. The Planning Group would be also the 14th at 2 o'clock, so an hour later. And then Technical Committee scheduled for July 19 at 10 a.m. And then this group, once again, would meet July 25th at 1:30 p.m. So please, if you are participating in the subcommittees, please look at that schedule, add them to your calendar. Any particular agenda items that we want to address and talk about at any one of these meetings?
Neffy, I'm just curious on that July 14th meeting. We currently only have it for 2 hours. And believe me, I would love to be able to get out at 2 hours, but I'm just wondering, because the 25th meeting is, I think, scheduled for a little bit longer.
I think that has to do with the Outreach Committee meeting at 1 o'clock.
No, I'm just wondering, I guess it is 2 hours, right? 1:30 to 2:30 to 3:30. No. I'm just wondering if that 14th meeting, we should ask people to hold their calendars for longer than to 5 instead of 4. Do you think that's going to be necessary with the chapters and all that? I don't know what these are the last 2 meetings, so.
We originally planned on 2 hours for the 14th because we're going to be reviewing chapters 1 and 4, all of which the planning group has approved previously.
Oh, okay.
So we extended 3 hours for July 25th because we will be reviewing new materials.
The chapters will be a little bit different. They'll be in a little bit more detail, but y'all have seen it we're going to build off what was in the technical memo. And you've seen a lot of the data. And so we'll build on that. So the thought is we can probably push through that. You'll see that information ahead of time. So
that's what I was going to ask. We'll get that ahead of time. Is there
and
if
anything rolled over, we could always roll it to the next.
Is there any other agenda item that anybody would like us to entertain?
I think I would ask for just a follow-up update on some of the topics that were discussed today about, the tracking of the citizen comments and that information, and just an update on the progress with that.
Thank you, Derek. All right, moving on to agenda number 4, item 14. Adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you all for your time. Catch you on the 14th.